Hello everybody, it's Cream, and we gotta talk about Mewtwo.
Is that my purpose? Am I just an experiment? A laboratory specimen? This cannot be my destiny. We dreamed of creating the world's strongest Pokemon. And we succeeded.
Mewtwo is one of my favorite Pokemon of all time. He's just so cool, I love him so much. He's purple? He's just like a big purple alien cat, and I think he's really badass, so that's cool. Mewtwo is one of the most iconic Pokemon of all time. He's extremely powerful, he's got a great design, and he spreads a good message while also simultaneously being the most badass Pokemon ever. Not only that, his mere existence sparks a philosophical debate. Everyone knows that Mewtwo is a clone of Mew. Or is he? You see, Mewtwo and Mew definitely share some DNA, but so do like me and my mom, or you and your mom. And that doesn't really make me a clone, does it? In the journals in Fire Red and Leaf Green, the scientists write that Mew gave birth to a new organism, Mewtwo. You see, Mew's experiment wasn't just a spur-of-the-moment decision. The process to create Mewtwo took years, according to the Pokedex in Pokemon Red and Blue. The scientists chose Mew to clone because it's said to be the most powerful Pokemon ever, and
An ancient civilization may have created a shrine to Mew, the most powerful Pokemon to have ever existed.
yeah. And in the Pokemon First movie, Mewtwo actually uses some of the machines used to create Mewtwo to clone other Pokemon. And usually all that's different is they get a couple birthmarks on them. And sometimes nothing at all. They're a carbon copy of the Pokemon they were cloned from. No, Mewtwo is not a clone at all, but something else.
This is something else.
And if we dive deep, and I'm talking Pokemon Adventures manga deep, yeah, I'm that serious, we can actually find a story that is similar to the ones we find in the games, except it specifically states that human DNA was spliced into his genetic material at some point. This means Mewtwo has at least 2 different specimens that his DNA is derived from. 2 different parents that he came from. That's not a clone. That's a genetically modified animal. Originally, Mewtwo was a clone of Mew, don't get me wrong there. That part is true. But years of horrific genetic mutilation, basically, caused Mew to become the more powerful, hate-filled, humanity-loathing being he is today. Or was today. You remember the first Mewtwo movie. I mean, who doesn't? It's iconic. But to summarize it, Mewtwo started off wondering what his purpose was.
Is that my purpose? Am I just an experiment?
And I mean, I would too if a group of people just made me and did a bunch of experiments on me and I was trapped in a lab my whole life. He ends up hating people. And more importantly, people who train Pokemon. He thinks that Pokemon and people can't get along as friends whatsoever.
And you're gonna destroy us to save Pokemon!
No. Your Pokemon will not be spared. They have disgraced themselves by serving humans. Those Pokemon are nothing but slaves.
Pika! Pika! Pika!
So, you say I am wrong? That you are not this human servant, you are his friend?
Pika!
You are as pathetic as the rest.
He sees this as cruelty to Pokemon, just like when he was in the lab. When Ash and the gang first meet Mewtwo, he's angry. And through a brainwash to Nurse Joy, he explains that he wants to take over the world. But ultimately, after almost killing Ash, he comes to discover that Pokemon aren't slaves to their trainer. They actually want to be with their trainers, and most of the time have a pretty good bond with them. In the midst of all this chaos, Mewtwo has a change of heart, an epiphany, and he stops his rage.
Mewtwo, where are you going?
Where my heart can learn what yours knows so well. What transpired here I will always remember. But perhaps for you, these events are best forgotten.
After this, Mewtwo and all the cloned Pokemon venture off to find a new place, a sanctuary where they can all live in peace together, not having to be disturbed by humankind. It sounds like Mewtwo still might have a little bit of disdain for people, but he can learn to live with them. Yeah, me too, buddy. You really can't help but feel sorry for Mewtwo in these moments. He didn't choose to be a super powerful being. He didn't choose to be alive. I really love this concept for a character because it delves deep into the concept of like philosophy and who we are. Think of like Aang from Avatar. He didn't choose to be the Avatar. He never wanted to be the Avatar. Aang is similar to Mewtwo because Mewtwo's super powerful and Aang is supposed to be super powerful, and you kind of get the drift. And they're both bald. Why is Mewtwo here? What purpose does he serve? He asks himself these questions all the time. That's basically his first word out of the lab. What purpose do I or anyone else serve on this planet? What is the point of life? Okay, we're getting too deep. I really can't answer that in this video, but I'll do my best for Mewtwo. And we can't start at the end of the movie. That would be preposterous. We have to go back. Way back. Whoa, not that far back.
I sense others near me.
Right there, perfect. September 1999. In 1999, Nintendo released a CD drama. And what that is, it's a story that you can listen to on a CD. Think of like Audible, how do they do audiobooks? Similar to that. But it's a story, like it's voiced over and everything. It's pretty cool. And in that box of CDs was The Birth of Mewtwo Pokemon Radio Drama. This is an official product licensed by Pokemon, and lore-wise, it's chock full of good stuff. They even made an anime special about this, and it reveals more and more about Mewtwo's origins. Created by scientist Dr. Fuji, Mewtwo is one of several cloning attempts, which also include Amber, a clone of Fuji's deceased daughter. That's sad already. The young Mewtwo in the tank that he's being held captive at befriends Amber 2. That's what they call her. They call her Amber 2. He befriends Amber 2, Bulbasaur 2, Charmander 2, and Squirtle 2, communicating with them telepathically, because I guess you can't talk while your whole body is being submerged in goop. However, the cloning process proves unstable, and Amber 2 and the rest of the clones die. They die. They frickin' die. This is a kid's show, remember? Mewtwo shows his first emotions by crying at the fact that Amber's leaving him, which he doesn't understand because he doesn't know what emotions are. Amber tells Mewtwo what crying is, since he's just been birthed into existence and doesn't know what even emotions are. And right before Amber 2 disappears, she tells Mewtwo that life is wonderful.
And don't cry, Mewtwo. You should be happy. You're alive, and life is wonderful.
This is a beautiful message. To save the traumatized Mewtwo, Fuji erases its memories and puts it under sedation until its body finishes developing, leading to the events of the film. This is another example of how the scientists just constantly mistreat Mewtwo and make him hate humanity. But this has yet to explain why Mewtwo was even made in the first place. While Mewtwo is sort of in his comatose state, he keeps saying to himself, "Life is wonderful," the thing that Amber told him before she disappeared. But he also asks, why is life wonderful? Because he hasn't experienced life at all. He's just been sitting in a tube his whole life, basically. So Mewtwo doesn't know what life is really like, and he doesn't know what makes life so good, like taxes or war. Now, obviously Mewtwo was made by the scientists in Team Rocket, but why? Well, Giovanni is known for stealing Pokemon at this point. Everybody knows that. He steals trainers' strongest Pokemon. Ultimately, Giovanni wants to have the strongest Pokemon for reasons mostly unknown, but you can hazard a guess. Probably something along the lines of, oh, I don't know, taking over the world, but we'll never know. So Mewtwo was basically just made for destruction. How would you feel about that if you just came out of the womb and you're given, like, a grenade? Or something, a baby with a grenade, something along those lines. But just like you or me, Mewtwo has a mind of his own. And just because Giovanni wanted the most powerful Pokemon, doesn't mean that Mewtwo wants to be the most powerful Pokemon. In fact, that's not what he wants at all. All Mewtwo wants is to find a better purpose than just being the most powerful Pokemon. He doesn't want to be violent and destructive. No one does. And at the end of the first movie, he almost dedicates his life to protecting Pokemon from abusive trainers. That's dedication. He only really uses his full power when he needs to. And let's talk about that. So Mewtwo is a psychic type Pokemon, obviously. He uses telekinesis to fly around. That's cool. He shoots shadow balls out from his hands and can even speak, unlike most Pokemon. Being an offspring of Mew, you'd think he'd have all of Mew's powers and abilities, but that's not the case. But in the games, Mew can learn all TMs, and Mewtwo can only learn, like, a good chunk of them, don't get me wrong, but not as much as Mew. My theory is that it has something to do with his human DNA, and it holds him back from using his full power. Regardless, Mewtwo is still way more powerful than Mew. It's in his base stats. He's got almost 100 more of a base stat total in the games, which is pretty good. And while it can't learn every move that Mew can, he doesn't need to, boasting almost 200 special attack. That's a lot of special attack. So Mewtwo at first might seem to be a violent, hate-filled, world-destroying monster like Frieza, but he's angry at people and humans for making him for such a violent reason, and develops a hatred for mankind. Understandable, buddy. I get you there. But just like in real life, things change. People can change. The reason Mewtwo was so popular after the first movie is because Pokemon, as cool or as cute as they can be, were generally seen as simple-brained, bubbly little monsters that can only say their own name, and they barely have any thought-provoking ideas in their squishy little brains. But Mewtwo changed that. He brought depth and self-reflection into the picture, all while being an all-powerful, gravity-defying, 6-foot-tall alien cat person. Which sounds really weird to say, but Mewtwo brought the question to so many people, why are we here? But I think the more important question to ask ourselves is, what am I doing now that I'm here? Because the circumstances of one's birth are irrelevant. It is what you do with the gift of life that determines who you are.
The human sacrificed himself to save the Pokemon. I pitted them against each other, but not until they set aside their differences did I see the true power they all shared deep inside. I see now that the circumstances of one's birth are irrelevant. It is what you do with the gift of life that determines who you are.